if you've seen the Twitter files, what have you learned from the kind of pressure from U.S. government agencies that was seen in Twitter files? And what do you do with that kind of pressure?
I mean, I've seen it. It's really hard from the outside to know exactly what happened in each of these cases. We've obviously been in a bunch of our own cases where where agencies or different folks will just say, "Hey, here's a threat that we're aware of. You should be aware of this too." It's not really pressure as much as it is just um, flagging something that our security systems should be on alert about. I get how some people could think of it as that, but at the end of the day, it's our call on how to handle that. But I mean, I just in terms of running these services, want to have access to as much information about what people think that adversaries might be trying to do as possible.
Wait, so you don't feel like there would be consequences if anybody, the CIA, the FBI, a political party, the Democrats or the Republicans, of high, powerful political figures write emails, you don't feel pressure from suggestions?
I guess what I'd say is there's so much pressure from all sides that I'm not sure that any specific thing that someone says is really adding that much more to the mix. It's I mean, there are obviously a lot of people who think that that we should be censoring more content, right? There are a lot of people who think we should be censoring less content. There are, as you say, all kinds of different groups that are involved in these debates, right? So there's the kind of elected officials and politicians themselves. There's the agencies, but there's the media. There's activist groups. There's this is not a U.S. specific thing. There are groups all over the world and kind of all in every country that bring different values. So it's just a very active debate, and I understand it, right? I mean, these are these kind of questions get to really some of the most important social debates that are being had. So it gets back to the question of truth, because for a lot of these things, they haven't yet been hardened into a single truth, and society's sort of trying to hash out what what we think, right, on certain issues. Maybe in a few hundred years, everyone will look back and say, "Hey, no, wasn't it obvious that it should have been this?" But no, we're kind of in that meat grinder now, and and working through that. So, no, these are all very complicated, and some people raise concerns in good faith and just say, "Hey, this is something that I want to flag for you to think about." Certain people, I certainly think, like, come at things with somewhat of a more kind of punitive or vengeful view of I want you to do this thing, and if you don't, then I'm going to try to make your life difficult in a lot of other ways. But like, I don't know, there's this is one of the most pressurized debates, I think, in society. So I just think that there are so many people and different forces that are trying to apply pressure from different sides that I don't think you can make decisions based on trying to make people happy. I think you just have to do what you think is the right balance and accept that people are going to be upset no matter where you come out on that.
Yeah, I like that pressurized debate. So how has your view of the freedom of speech evolved over the years?
And
now with AI, where the freedom might apply to them, not just to the humans, but to the personalized agents, as you've spoken about them.
So, yeah, I mean, I've probably gotten a somewhat more nuanced view, just because I think that there are, I come at this, I'm obviously very pro freedom of expression, right? I don't think you build a service like this that gives people tools to express themselves unless you think that people expressing themselves at scale is a good thing, right? So I didn't get into this to try to prevent people from expressing anything. I want to give people tools so they can express as much as possible. And then I think it's become clear that there are certain categories of things that we've talked about that I think almost everyone accepts are bad and that no one wants, and that are illegal, even in countries like the US, where you have the First Amendment that's very protective of enabling speech. It's like you're still not allowed to do things that are going to immediately incite violence or, violate people's intellectual property or things like that. So there are those, but then there's also a very active core of just active disagreements in society where some people may think that something is true or false. The other side might think it's the opposite or just unsettled, right? And those are some of the most difficult to kind of handle, like we've talked about. But one of the lessons that I feel like I've learned is that a lot of times when you can, the best way to handle this stuff more practically is not in terms of answering the question of should this be allowed, but just like what is the best way to deal with someone being a jerk? Is the person basically just having a like repeat behavior of like causing a lot of issues? So looking at it more at that level.
And its effect on the broader communities, health of the community, health of the
Yeah.
state. It's tricky though, because like, how do you know there could be people that have a very controversial viewpoint that turns out to have a positive long-term effect on the health of the community because it challenges the community.
That's true. Absolutely. I think you want to be careful about that. I'm not sure I'm expressing this very, very clearly. Because I certainly agree with your point there. And my point isn't that we should not have people on our services that are being controversial. That's certainly not what I mean to say. It's that often I think it's not just looking at a specific example of speech that it's most effective to handle this stuff. And I think often you don't want to make specific binary decisions of kind of this is allowed or this isn't. I mean, we talked about it's fact checking or Twitter's community voices thing. I think that's another good example. It's like it's not a question of is this allowed or not. It's just a question of adding more context to the thing. And I think that's helpful.